Welcome to the Everymaker. My name is Nick, and today we're taking this old frame and replacing it with something a little more our style. It's kind of a rite of passage for every woodworker to build a picture frame. At some point when you tell people you do woodworking, someone's going to ask you, oh hey, can you make a picture frame for me for my wedding photo? It seems like such a simple thing. Cut a few miters, glue it up, boom, there you go. But picture frames require a little bit of extra thought and a lot of measuring. With most other projects, if you make a mistake on your first measurement, as long as you're consistent, you're typically okay. You just make your box a little bit smaller, no big deal. But with a picture frame, since you're usually fitting it to a piece of glass, you have to make sure you have enough of an overhang to keep your glass in place, without, seeing the edges and glass falls out. As with most projects, I jumped past doing the simple frame and landed straight in front of making this about as complicated as I possibly could. Making it with a beveled mirror that is as large as I could possibly get. But by breaking down the project, even complicated projects can become simple. Now that the boards are cut to rough length, I want to cut a little bit of a rabbet in there for the mirror to sit into. A rabbet is just a groove cut into the edge of a board. In this case, it will be on the inside of the frame where the mirror is going to sit. I started by adjusting the height of my saw blade to the depth of the rabbet. I added a feather board to my saw to help keep the board nice and tight against the fence, as some of these boards have a little bit of a bow to them. Once all the boards were cut, I adjusted the fence to the width of the rabbet and finished cutting the groove in all the boards. After looking at the boards against the mirror, I decided they were a little bit too big, so I cut about 3/4 of an inch off the outside of each board. Now I created a quick jig to cut miters. One of the important things is you make sure that you're always referencing off the inside edge of your frame. This makes sure you are always cutting your miters in the right direction. A jig is just a way to hold your work so that you can create repeated cuts that are exactly the same each time. I cut one edge of each of the boards. Now when you're cutting your miters, you would think that maybe measuring from the inside edge would be fine, but that's not. Outside edge, not either. You actually have to measure from the edge of this inside channel here to that's where your mirror or your picture or whatever you're framing is going to be sitting. That's the measurement we need. There are people out there that can easily do the math to measure off the inside or the outside of a board, but for me, that's just too much geometry to handle when I'm trying to get a project finished. I find it much easier to measure the inside of the rabbet and mark my lines with a combination square. A miter joint is just two boards cut at 45 degrees, making a 90-degree angle when you put the boards together. With the first board, I carefully sneak up on that line, making small adjustments until I have the exact perfect fit that I'm going for. Once it fits perfectly, I clamp that board to the other one and use that board as my template. If you want to see how I built this miter sled jig, click the link in the cards or down below in the doobly-doo. Then I repeat the process with the top and bottom boards. You want them to be the exact same length, otherwise you're gonna get gaps. Now there are several ways to put a frame like this together. I'm going to use pocket screws because they're strong enough for what I'm doing, and they're quick and they're easy. Also, they're going to be hidden under the back set of boards, but we'll get to that in a minute. When cutting pocket holes, you want to make sure you are drilling into the back of the boards, and also line the holes up very carefully to make sure you're not drilling into the edge of the board or into that rabbet. A combination of glue and pocket screws will not only make the miter joints plenty strong, but will also pull the two boards together nice and tight. Once the boards are screwed together, I made sure to clean up as much of the glue squeeze out as possible, especially in the rabbit, as that's much harder to do after it dries. Now that the main part of the frame is finished that holds the mirror, I know exactly what size I need to make the back part of the frame. The back part of the frame is going to hold the French cleat, which will allow me to mount it to the wall nice and secure to hold that really heavy mirror. The back part of the frame not only provides room and stability for the French cleat, but also makes the frame appear a little more substantial to hold up against the size of the mirror. The sideboards are cut to the same height as the mirror, and the top and bottom are cut a little shorter as the back frame is going to be put together with butt joints. This will help hold the miters together, as a miter joint can separate as the wood expands and contracts. I cleaned up one edge of the boards and lined them up with the inside ledge of the rabbit so I could cut the boards down to the proper width. I clamped the sideboards in place, marking them for their final length. Then once again, carefully sneaking up to that line. Once those were in place, I marked and cut the bottom board to fit between those two. I need to cut several boards at this length, and my crosscut sled isn't quite long enough to clamp a stop block to it. So I took a couple of my offcuts and created an extended stop set to the width between the sideboards. Then I could cut all the boards out that I needed. The top, the French cleats, and the boards that are going to hold the mirror in place. A French cleat is a way of securing something to a wall. Two boards are cut at the same angle, in my case 45 degrees. One is attached to the mirror, the other is attached to the wall. They nestle together, making a very secure and strong connection. I cut the board that will attach to the wall to allow the mirror to slide left and right on the cleat, making it easier to position. And a little sandpaper to break those super sharp edges. I have everything cut out and ready to go. I've got the back part of the frame cut, everything's fit quite nice. I have the cross pieces for the back. These are going to get pocket holes so that I can screw that into the frame, holding the mirror in place. Also, the piece for the French cleat. That way I can just hang it up on the wall, good to go. But now, lots of clamps, lots of glue. There is an old adage in the woodworking community: you can never have too many clamps. This is one of those cases that proves that statement outright. Also missing from this image, a workbench. I made a huge mistake in this glue up by balancing the frame across two sawhorses. This allowed for two corners to sag while drying, and this created a pretty significant twist in the final frame. Once the glue was dry, I used my number 6 plane to clean up all of the edges. You can also just use sandpaper. I used a mini block plane to take off the corners and give each edge a small bevel just to break up the squareness of the frame. I painted the entire frame, front and back, to give a little protection since this is going in a bathroom. And now for the moment of truth, fitting the mirror. And it fits perfectly. A layer of cardboard will help protect the mirror. In a smaller frame, a few nails to hold the picture in place would be all you need. But like I've said, this mirror is heavy. I'm using the French cleat not only to mount the mirror to the wall, but to hold the mirror into the frame, making sure to drill the pocket holes on the right side on the back side of the bevel. I found going slow with the drill on a high speed gave me the best results. I still had a little bit of tear out, but I was able to clean that up with a chisel. I used a lot of screws to make sure that this was nice and secure. And then just repeat the process with the board across the bottom of the mirror, though this one didn't need any kind of a bevel. So this part of the French cleat goes against the wall, and I have a couple big screws that I'm going to put right into the studs. I've marked the wall exactly where the screws need to go. So this will go up here, but I just need to figure out exactly where to hang this so that I have the top of my mirror exactly in the right spot. I measured that distance. I put this on the back of the mirror, kind of snugged it up in there, and measured that distance. Turns out exactly 8 inches, which works out quite well. So I'm going to measure. I have my line measured 8 inches down from the top. That goes on the bottom of this. So now I just have to drill my holes into this thing and attach it to the wall. It's very important to keep this board level, as there is no way to adjust the mirror afterwards. The screws were placed into the studs to make sure it was secure. I didn't pre-drill all the way into the studs, but once the screws started to give a little resistance, I just backed them out a little bit and then finished screwing them all the way in. I wasn't entirely sure how this was going to work because when I brought the boards home, they started to twist on me a little bit. And when I got everything cut out and put together, it really twisted the entire frame. But this is a pretty thick piece of glass, so when I got that in there and those boards across the bottom and the top, it really stabilized the entire frame and kind of brought it back flat. So now it sits up on the wall quite nice, and I'm very happy with the way it came out. It's a super simple design, it's not fancy at all, but it looks 1,000 times better than that old frame that I had in here before. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button, and if you want to stick around and see what other projects I have coming up, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys again real soon.